Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, unfortunately, will not be bringing that Lombardi trophy to the city of Cincinnati, but they could be adding a fantasy championship trophy to your collections. We dig into our Week 15 wide receiver and tight end rankings on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. We're here for you every day, Monday through Friday, helping you win your fantasy football leagues. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. All right, it's time to continue with our Week 15 prep. We have to get those lineups all ready for you to go in this huge Week 15. We already went through our running backs and quarterback rankings yesterday. So if you missed that, you can go listen to it after the show. Today, we'll dig into our wide receivers and tight ends. Starting right at the top, I don't think it's going to be a shocker to anyone. It's Jamar Chase. We have him at wide receiver 1, each of us this week. But I also have T. Higgins as a top 10 guy this week. I have him at number 10. You have him at 17. I think both of these guys are going to do work. I know that T. Higgins disappointed last week, but Deron Bland just played out of his mind. I felt for the Cowboys. Like he really showed up. T. Higgins is getting the red zone, getting the end zone targets. He's getting a ton of targets in general before last week. So I think he bounces right back. And we know Jamar is just always a stud.
Yeah, when you look at these corners, they have one good guy that you look at in the former Bengal, actually, Chidobe Awuzie. He's been okay, and they like the other guy as well. Roger McCreary has played a little bit better. So these are decent, okay corners against kind of average to below average receivers, but these are not those receivers. I mean, Jamar Chase, again, is being moved all over. That's a key for T. Higgins. Can they move him around a little bit to get the matchup that they want here in this game? Awuzie obviously has a little bit of history on these guys, Brian Callahan as well. Maybe a few tips there defensively, but that's not going to affect too much because it's a real play of Joe Burrow. I think the biggest thing about Joe Burrow is just worrying about his house and making sure no one's getting into it while he's playing in Nashville this week. So I look at this and say, hey, he's got these receivers. He's going to pepper them a ton of targets. It's just a matter of how much they want to involve Higgins. Like if Chase is getting open and just destroying it and Chase Brown is doing his thing, and then it seems like Joe Burrow is relentlessly just throwing to Jamar Chase. So I think they're going to need Higgins a little bit more than they needed Dallas. And I think the matchup is going to be a little bit more favorable this week as well.
Yeah, and he's like the targets are still there for him in those important situations. So don't let 1 week, deter you away or be scared of him. He's still a fantastic play. Now after that, Puka Nacua plays tonight on Thursday Night Football. He's been absolutely fantastic. We both have him top 4. I have him number 2, actually. You have him 4. Justin Jefferson, obviously up there. Nico Collins has been balling out. Tyreek Hill, he's come back to life, right? So like you drafted Tyreek Hill for that reason. He's come back to life. You're going to plug him in there. But one guy we also have both in our top. No, you have 11. I was going to say both in top 10, but just outside of that for you. You have him at 11. I have him at 9. Courtland Sutton, he has been really, really great after like a disappointing start of the season. It wasn't even so much disappointing. We just thought he was going to be terrible, and he was. And then all of a sudden, he completely has come out of his shell with Bo Nix. But you can't sit this guy. He's been amazing, and he gets a nice matchup against the Colts.
Yeah, I mean, Tyreek Hill has a terrific matchup as well, but this is one of the better matchups there. When you look at it, I mean, Hill could be out of the park really good there in his spot, but you look at this one, I think it's even better with Courtland Sutton on the outside. He's just not Tyreek Hill. That's why he's ranked a little bit lower, but the Colts are not very good on the outside. That's been a big issue with them all season long on defense. They're probably going to have to look to draft a corner pretty high to shore up that spot if they're not thinking another position early. So Courtland Sutton should have a day here. He's pretty good at home. And it's an important game. The Broncos need to win it to stay ahead of the Colts, or pretty much eliminate the Colts virtually here if they can win this game, and they don't want anyone to creep into that wild card spot. So, again, Sutton should be a key role here with Bo Nix. He's been the most consistent receiver. Everyone's a little bit more up and down with him, but it's a lot like, I think, what we're seeing with Terry McLaurin, right? I mean, it's Jane Daniels as a rookie has his go-to guy, feeds him all over, a guy that's been kind of like under wraps a bit with other quarterback situations. Bo Nix is doing the same thing with Courtland Sutton. And again, there's not much after Sutton. That's why I think I have McLaurin ahead of him at 7. He has a great matchup as well against the Saints without Marshawn Lattimore, who now plays for the Commanders. And then you look at Sutton, no Kenny Moore probably in coverage because Moore will probably spend more time in the slot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like 9+ targets for him every week. Now, Mike Evans is having a very Mike Evans season, but a little, he's had the injury. It hasn't been as boom as we would like, but he still has had some big weeks this year. He's finished as wide receiver 6, 9, a couple weeks ago, wide receiver 3. But then in between those, it's wide receiver 35, 67, 85, 45. So, when you get into your playoffs, he could really hurt you or he can win you your week. I mean, that's what Mike Evans is. He gets a harder matchup against the Chargers this week. Where are you going? Is he going to help you win or, make it harder on you? We both have him ranked relatively high. I have him at 13. You have him 10.
Yeah, I'm going to give you a touchdown with Mike Evans. Anything else, I cannot guarantee this week with Mike Evans. I just simply can't. I think he's going to find the end zone after not being there last week. It increases the chances that Baker Mayfield is going to look for him in scoring possession a little bit more often this week. The Chargers, again, you can beat them a little bit, but not with maybe the downfield passes, with the pressure that they have. So I think it's going to have to come through scoring this week. And we know he's a guy that's capable of catching multiple short touchdowns in a game. So he's going to have to do it scoring. Big plays might be hard to come by. He needs a little bit more volume this week to also come through. But he's just a hard guy. You can't sit him at this stage, given the way that Baker Mayfield has really played all season long.
There's a duo that you're trusting this week, and it's Garrett Wilson and Davante Adams. They did have a nice week last week. They get the Jaguars. It's a good matchup. At least it was, right? The last couple weeks they've been much better. So I don't know if that's just they've gotten better or the offensive they faced just kind of failed. I have Adams at 16. You have him at 14. We're very close there. Garrett Wilson, a little bit different. You have him at 13. I have him at 22. I still think he's a very, very viable play because of his targets, right? He almost always gets 8 to 10 targets in a game. It's just last week is the first week that he actually did anything with those targets. And he's still putting up 114 yards, still only finished as a wide receiver 16. He's just not coming down with those touchdowns. So that's why I have him at 22 instead of higher, but you're feeling good about them this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think just looking at the Jaguars matchup, the way Aaron Rodgers played last week, getting 300 yards, again, the state of the running game also helps, where they'll be more willing to throw the ball here. They have some potential with Braylon Allen and Isaiah Davis in this game. Should, as expected, we don't have another week here of what they can do with Breece Hall. So I think that takes away another key receiver. There's not much else here, right? These are the two receivers. They've been kind of phasing out these other guys that used to be involved right behind the tight end and all that. It's really about getting the ball to these two wide receivers because that's not just important for them in this game, but also they want to keep Aaron Rodgers. This connection, these three guys have to work well together going forward if Aaron Rodgers indeed is going to be the quarterback again in 2025. So I think they're going to try to finish strong, and that's going to help us in fantasy as well.
You know what? I hope so, right? Garrett Wilson deserves it. He deserves to have some big weeks here. Now, the Seahawks duo, it's like Jackson Smith-Njigba has been on fire. You're going to play him. Even though his targets have come down, but he's still productive. His yards per reception have been high. Like, he's been too good to question him against the Packers. But DK Metcalf, on the other hand, I mean, the last 4 games since coming back from injury, he's been wide receiver 32, 37, 38, and 42. So, like, do we play him? I mean, we definitely have him as a flex option. You have him as a wide receiver 25. I have him at 27. But it feels like if you sit him, he's going to go off for 40 points because we know DK Metcalf can do that. But if not, like, what if he just keeps doing what he's been doing?
Yeah, you look at the history, it's not great. Like, and the Packers giving up a lot, whether it's an outside receiver or number one receivers. They've been really tough on those type of players this season with their coverage, and that's a credit to Jeff Hafley, their new defensive coordinator. They are a little bit more vulnerable inside. JSN has seen a little bit more slot work. He's better doing that, obviously, than DK Metcalf. At one point, they did move Metcalf around in the slot, but they don't do that as much in this particular scheme. So that's going to help JSN quite a bit. And I think he can get by with the volume, the shorter passes, where DK needs the touchdown, needs the long play. And those are two things that are hard to come by against the Packers. So again, you're going to play him. I mean, we'll see. I don't know what his future is going to be in Seattle after this, because they've got some contract issues with salary cap. Do they move on? Do they just like GSN? Are they transitioning that way with Geno Smith kind of struggling to get that going? So that's something we're going to watch the last few games. But in this particular game, I don't love him, but I still think you have to play him at least as a wide receiver 3 just because he's DK Metcalf.
I know his name, man. If you took his name off his jersey, would we have an easier time benching him? I think so. We have a lot more difficult decisions to make. Guys like Calvin Ridley, Jerry Jeudy, DJ Moore. Are we trusting them in our fantasy playoffs? We will get to them and finish up our wide receiver rankings right after a quick break.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It's a number one sportsbook in America. That's right. Get ready to tackle the action here in Week 15 and beyond. We have 4 weeks left in the regular season. The holidays are about to come, so you want to cash in while you can when you have a full slate of games, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So it's all right there, all easy for you. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started and join today. You'll get started with $100 and $50 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is also brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite events should not be stressful. Game Time is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. I've used this app so many times and for many, many reasons. One of them being you get the panorama view of your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. No surprises. And it takes seconds, a matter of seconds to buy the tickets. It's very, very easy, very, very fast, and I have no patience, so that's perfect for me. And then they have the best ticket coverage in the business in case anything goes wrong. They have event cancellation protection, 24-hour return guarantees, job loss assurance. You get to take the worries and the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, you just create the account on the Game Time app. Redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. So more difficult decisions. Calvin Ridley did not come through the way we wanted Calvin Ridley to come through last week against the Jaguars. But will he come through against the Bengals? Because this is, I know, like, in one good matchup, he didn't do it, but it's another such a great matchup. It's so hard to say, he's not going to be able to do it. He got 12 targets last week. 12. I don't know how that only turned into 59 receiving yards, but I think if he gets 12 targets against Bengals defense or anything close to it, he has to have a better game.
Yeah, I think the roller coaster ride of Will Levis is going to be there. Like, he's been sharp, but then right when you began to trust him, he didn't come through a little bit. And there are some questions if he should still be the long-term starter. I think they're going to explore other options. Sam Darnold has come into mind for some Titans people. But for this moment, we're going to look at this matchup is pretty good, right? The Bengals secondary has not been all that great. They give up a lot to receivers. Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, I think it had to stop at some point, the touchdown. So,
but I think it can come right back, though.
Yeah, it can come right back.
Yeah.
But I think Ridley is still the regular guy, right? Even though Westbrook-Ikhine was on that heater with the touchdown, so he's the kind of glue of the passing game. You'd also figure there's going to be some volume in this game, right? The Bengals should be up here, where last week it was just like a weird defensive grind between the Jaguars and the teams are playing not to lose almost late in the game. But this week they're going to have to just chuck it quite a bit with Ridley and maybe get some garbage points, which will help. Where I think Jaguars were competing a little too hard last week. I think if the Bengals get a lead here, then Ridley is going to be getting a lot of open field to work with and help Levis in this game. So I do like Ridley for rebound, but I'm not going too crazy. I'm keeping him as a wide receiver 2 at number 21 this week.
Yeah, and I have him at 18. I do think he's a really solid play. And I do think Nick Westbrook-Akine is a sleeper type of guy. If you're looking for a flex in a deeper league, I do think he can go back to having a big game. Now, Jerry Jeudy and DJ Moore have been really good as of late. DJ Moore came down a bit last week, but I think both you can trust. I really do. Jerry Jeudy comes down with a touchdown. That's basically all the Browns did last week, but 5 for 64 and a touchdown. That kind of feels like his floor at this point, which is really impressive for, Jerry Jeudy. But as long as Jameis Winston's out there, I think you play him. And even against the Chiefs, like the Browns aren't going to be able to run against the Chiefs. They're going to have to throw. So he should get a lot of targets. And then DJ Moore, I mean, we just saw him against the Vikings a few weeks ago, and he had a huge game, right? So they'll likely go down by a lot of points again and then have to try to fight their way back in the second half.
Yeah, they're clearly not forgetting about DJ Moore now, this Bears offense. I mean, they've been toggling between Keenan Allen and Rome Odunze, whatever they want to use, Cole Kmet in a given week. But DJ Moore, they're realizing he's the alpha. He pouted for a reason. They're starting to give the ball to him now with Thomas Brown. So he will get things done here a little bit in garbage time as well. You figured the Vikings will have some success. But the Bears, again, did keep it close there for a while in the first one. So I do like DJ Moore, but I do like Jeudy better. Like I would say if I went pure by the matchup and the player, I like Moore. But if you throw some logic out the window and Jameis Winston just chucking it to Jerry Jeudy and him continuing to just be on a heater, then you're looking at that. Even though, again, it's not the easiest. You have Trent McDuffie. He hasn't had the biggest shutdown season in the world. But you think that Jeudy will just keep it up because, again, he also is more of a guarantee to dominate targets. He's kind of in the situation that you have with Courtland Sutton, right, or Terry McLaurin, where he is the clear number one with Cedric Tillman out of the mix, Elijah Moore not doing much, where DJ Moore still got to worry about those other guys to cut into his production this week.
Yeah, I like both, but I agree with you. I would trust Jerry Jeudy a little bit more if I had to make that choice. Now, Amari Cooper finally was alive, right? I mean, he got 12 targets last week and he was not getting used at all prior to that. And then Khalil Shakir had a good game as well with that long touchdown and some extra catches outside of that as well. They get a great matchup this week, right? Against the Lions. I do think you can trust them both. This is going to be a scary one to say you could trust Amari Cooper, but the Lions blitz a ton. Since Aiden Hutchinson went down, they have to because they don't have the same type of talent. And they're very, very injured there, so they have to blitz a ton. And Josh Allen thrives against the blitz. Like he is so good throwing against the blitz. So I do obviously feel a little bit better about Khalil Shakir because he's been more involved. He's, been a little bit more consistent, but I do think Amari Cooper can have a second good game in a row.
Yeah, I think Amari Cooper has a little bit better matchup. That's why I'm slightly above. Actually, I'm at 37, Shakir at 38. You also have Cooper, but a few spots higher at, I think, where did you have him at 29 ahead of where you have the other receiver here, Shakir, at 34, because when you look at it, the matchup is a little bit better for Cooper on the outside than it is in the slot. We know that Brian Branch, some of the good people they have on the inside. It also goes for tight end, right? Should Dalton Kincaid play, Lions remain stingy against the tight end, even without Alex Anzalone in there. So in the middle of the field, the Lions are a little bit better outside because they have Terrion Arnold, the rookie, a little bit more vulnerable. So I'm looking forward to seeing Cooper build on last week's game. One thing we know for sure, well, I actually don't know that for sure. You could get a lot of volume again from Josh Allen this week because, again, the Lions could put up a lot of points. Allen might have to respond. The Bills defense could be playing in a hole again just based on the matchup with the running back. So that would also help both of these guys succeed if Allen is putting the ball up 50 times.
I'm happy the game is in Detroit, right? If it was in Buffalo, it's going to be cold. Then the Lions probably, the offense wouldn't be able to put up a lot of points. But this game in Detroit, this should be a very high-scoring game. Now, we have DeVonta Smith, who's been struggling a lot, right? He really hasn't been doing much at all for fantasy. He's had 14, 29, and 37 receiving yards in his last 3 games. It wasn't a disaster last week because he pulled in the touchdown, but he plays the Steelers this week. I don't know if you can trust him, right? Like AJ Brown's been the one that's been speaking up. He'll probably get extra targets. Or would you transition to a guy like Jameson Williams then instead against the Bills? Or can you possibly trust Brian Thomas Jr. this week against the Jets?
Yeah, I don't like Jameson Williams or Brian Thomas's matchup. Let's just say that, because the Bills secondary is still pretty good on the outside. So that's going to be tough to make the big plays. They also have pretty good pass rush. They can get after Jared Goff. So I don't know if he's going to sit in there and make plays, where I think the middle of the field is going to be the key for Goff this week, as it often is. And Brian Thomas gets the Jets secondary. I know Sauce Gardner's hurt and they haven't been as good, but again, he is a rookie, and you have some savvy schemers there in the corners for the Jets. So I'd still like DeVonta Smith. He could play the Jerry Jeudy role, get a touchdown. He did actually score last week against the Panthers. That kind of salvaged his day a little bit in relation to AJ Brown not doing all that much. So again, maybe at some point Jalen Hurts might be just annoyed by AJ Brown and just say, look, DeVonta Smith has been my boy. Like, I know you were my friend, whatever, before, but DeVonta Smith is Mr. Reliable. He just comes out there and does what he needs to do. So maybe this will work in Smith's favor. And again, the Steelers have kind of been an interesting matchup with corners. Like, they're not like the best, but they're not the worst. It's just scheming some guys open. And I think Smith is a little bit better to do that because they can move them around.
And I'll say, like, if I had to choose between Marvin Harrison Jr. or DeVonta Smith, I think I might lose my mind, because those two guys are the ones that are, I do think this week were the hardest for me to rank. I think I lean Marvin Harrison over DeVonta Smith.
Yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all. I mean, the Patriots, it's just hard to know what you're going to get. And really more, it's hard to know what to get from the Cardinals passing game in any given week. It's 1 week, it's a Michael Wilson game. 1 week, it's the Trey McBride getting peppered. 1 week, it's Marvin Harrison scoring touchdowns but not doing much else. So I don't know. The Cardinals passing game is a little bit all over the place. With that said, Marvin Harrison is still like the number one target there with McBride, so they're going to try to get him the ball. And again, in terms of the matchup, I think the Patriots secondary is a little bit easier also than the Steelers. So there is a lot of logic behind that. I think Harrison might have more upside. Smith might have the higher floor, maybe, but Harrison definitely has the higher upside this week because he can make big plays and touchdowns.
All right, let's transition over to tight ends. There's a lot of tough decisions to make over there as well. Like, will David Njoku play, please? Like, we need you. Brock Bowers, will he bounce back? Let's dig into all that to end today's show after we take a quick break. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, just pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. Your points, you can use them to jet off on a dream vacation, put your points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and 700,000 plus hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes. You can redeem them toward a future rent payment. They're honestly just designed to meet your lifestyle. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game will get a major upgrade. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNFL. Make sure to use our URL, please, so they know that we sent you. That's joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNFL to start earning points with your rent payments today. Alrighty, so my tight end one plays on Thursday Night Football, and I hope they do exactly what they did last week and just pepper them like crazy, and that's George Kittle. That's the man, George Kittle. If the 49ers want to win tonight, they better do that. You have him at 3, but you're still obviously very high on him. Now, you have David Njoku as your tight end 2, right behind Travis Kelce, and I have David Njoku at 4. Of course, after we do these rankings, he pops up on the injury report with a hamstring injury, and he's day-to-day. Those hamstring injuries can get toughy. But if he does play, great matchup against the Chiefs. And he's been the tight end 2, the number 2 tight end in scoring in back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, I mean, this is what happened last year. It's almost like a weird deja vu all over again. It's just different people, right?
Yeah.
It's David Njoku and Jerry Jeudy instead of David Njoku and Amari Cooper. It's Jameis Winston instead of Joe Flacco. It's the same thing, and it's a different offense too, which is also funny. But it's the same thing is happening. It's like, okay, we're just going to throw it up to these 2 guys. These are our best 2 guys. Cedric Tillman's injury and not being available has helped. Elijah Moore kind of fading and doing nothing has also helped. So these 2 guys are the people in the offense, and the Chiefs have just been bad. every game trying to cover the tight end. It's just not what they do very well. I mean, they have a lot of strengths on their defense. They have good corners, all that, but they actually have decent linebackers too, but they just don't maybe care as much, or they don't have the safeties to handle the tight ends, whatever. I think they give that. So David Njoku would step into really a really great matchup, and you figure this could be a game where the Chiefs open it up a little bit, which would be great. Like, we could use a blowout so the other team can put up some numbers and garbage, because that's what we need from Winston here. But if Njoku plays, he's high up there. I'm not going to be too crazy to try to plug in another Browns tight end if he doesn't play. So just keep that in mind. I just can't do that. So again, if he doesn't play, there are a lot of good alternatives. But I mean, yeah, it's going to be tough if you don't have him, because that's a big asset out of the fantasy playoffs for you.
I'm going to call it right now. The Browns beat the Chiefs this week.
Okay.
That's my bold take.
Okay.
All right, moving on. Brock Bowers. Listen, this man has been so good for his rookie season, right? And he's going to remain in our top 5 because of what he's done. He's your tight end 4. He's my tight end 5. I will say I'm a little nervous, right? It's been up and down. He's had these huge weeks, but even in just the last 3 weeks, it's 5.8 points. Then in week 13, 25 points. And then last week, 6.7. Now, anytime you have a tight end that can put up 25 points, he's special. Like, that's not a regular, and he's done it multiple times this year. But the Falcons, they're giving up just 9.6 fantasy points to the position this year. We saw Michael Mayer play nearly the same amount of snaps as Bowers last week. He got 4 more targets and 4 more receptions than Bowers last week. And we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And they play on Monday night. So it's like, there's a lot of things working against him. You're obviously going to start Brock Bowers, but I would be prepared for him to put up a stinker.
Yeah, I think if you can get away with like 6 for 60 with Brock Bowers,
you'll be happy. We're all happy.
You should be thrilled with that, because I don't know if he's going to. It's just right. It's very hard to expect a big game with that quarterback situation going forward. And I'm hoping they get someone that can really know how to use him next year. I know they've used him pretty well, but it's almost been by default, right? A lot of things happen that we didn't expect. Davante Adams being traded, those type of things, right? Where they've just not really had other wide receivers emerge behind Jacoby Myers. So so that's why I didn't like Bowers going in as much, because you had Adams and Myers. And I think as soon as Adams left, Bowers just took off. I mean, he was very good before then even, but again, I'd like a coach that can get him more consistently involved. I don't know what this Mayer split is. I know he was a second-round pick as well. It just came out of nowhere last week, so let's hope they don't stick with it. And maybe they'll move to a 12 personnel type team next year, or maybe they're experimenting with that, but it's still Bowers and the man. Now, the other guy that was the rookie last year that was the stud was Sam Laporta. Now he's redeemed himself a little bit late in the season with a lot of touchdown games. Mm-hmm. And that's the biggest thing he's doing. Big plays and touchdowns. He's not the same volume guy. I have at 11. You have him pretty high as well at number 8. And then we have Mark Andrews. This is a tough decision if you have to make this, or just looking at who would you like. But I have Andrews at 8, and you have Andrews at 11. So why do you like Laporta more than Andrews, and why do I like the other way around?
They're both really tough matchups, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, the Giants are very, very good against tight ends, against Mark Andrews, but so are the Bills. I just think the Bills and Lions game is going to be so much more high scoring that Laporta is going to have a chance to come down with a touchdown. I don't really think the Ravens are going to need Mark Andrews at all, right? Have Derrick Henry just run it 100 gazillion times against the Giants. They're playing against Tommy DeVito. Like, I just don't think the Giants are going to put up many points against the Ravens. Maybe Mark Andrews can come down with a touchdown early in that game, because he is scoring touchdowns like crazy. Yeah. But I just don't think after halftime they're going to have to throw all too much.
Yeah, I actually think that's why I have him. I think Andrews is going to score in this game, because they're going to be able to run the ball, to do what they want. Well, Lamar Jackson needs a big game here. I know they're playing the Giants and should have it, but he kind of needs a big game just to get on track, like a get well game, because they've had a bye. They've had some tough games before that, right? Losing to the Steelers, they still have to play them a second time. So they need a good tune-up after the bye. They're going to try to get things rolling here. So that's why I like Andrews a little bit more than Laporta, because, again, I think it's going to be a big game for the backs this week in Detroit. So that's what I have. And again, if Laporta scores a touchdown, it'll probably be pretty even between him and Andrews this week.
Now, Jake Ferguson, not what we wanted last week either. Coming back from the concussion, he puts up just under 5 fantasy points last week. It was very disappointing. But I do think the good news is that it wasn't because Luke Schoonmaker took his job, right?
Right.
So Luke Schoonmaker looked good while he was out, so maybe he was going to have to split work. Like Ferguson still played double the snaps as a Schoonmaker. He still saw 4 more targets than Schoonmaker. I do think the second week back, the Bengals off or defensive matchup was great, right? I don't want to say it wasn't, but this Panthers one is even better. I mean, it's the best one that you can have for fantasy tight ends. Like these are guys that scored over 10 fantasy points against the Bengals or against the Panthers. I'm not going to name them all. I'm just naming like the random ones. Noah Gray put up 22 points. Adam Troutman put up 19. Foster Moreau 14. Juwan Johnson 10. Grant Calcaterra last week filling in for Dallas Goedert for the Eagles. He scored a touchdown and got nearly 10 fantasy points. So Jake Ferguson should really be able to be a playable guy this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope again. We don't want the split. I don't know why these teams feel compelled to do that. I think part of it in that first game back is also like trying to get cleared for the practice time and all that. So maybe Schoonmaker has a little bit more practice. They don't want to overexpose, but you say that Ferguson played more. So he should play a little bit more this week. There's room for both of these guys to be productive, but I want to see Ferguson do some damage, and I think it will happen this week. I think he's going to score, and we'll see a pretty good game from overall. What I want to see him and Cooper Rush have a good game together. It's been a while, so let's have that role here. But yeah, the Panthers absolutely cannot cover the tight end. They're actually a little bit better than you think on wide receivers, so that also helps in this matchup. I'm not saying CeeDee Lamb shut down, but it's not like the Cowboys have a lot of other receivers here. Brandon Cooks, it's probably pilfered a couple of tight end potential touchdowns the past couple games. So I'd really love Ferguson this week. If you need him, I think you play him, and no reaching for Schoonmaker, however, this week.
No, I'm right with you there. And other guys we haven't mentioned yet, Trey McBride, obviously up there. I have him at 2. You have him at 5. TJ Hawkinson should be a great play this week. We both have him at 7. We both have Jonnu Smith at 6. Kyle Pitts is not playable. You do have him at 12. You're crazy. I have him at 19.
I know.
Like, this is my thing. I don't even think you're crazy for having it at 12. He could have a blow up game. I do not care. Every guy in a blue moon has a blow up game besides Kyle Pitts, it seems like. But I just like, I'm not taking the risk in the small little tiny chance that this is the one game he does well. Like I can't do it anymore. If I miss out, I'm fine. I'm sick of him always doing absolutely nothing. But I want you to rank these 3 guys to finish up our tight end rankings here. Tucker Kraft against the Seahawks, Pat Freiermuth, our boy, against the Eagles, or Zech Ertz against the Saints. Zech Ertz has been the safest, but I will say the Saints have allowed only 1 touchdown to tight ends all season long, and that's pretty much where Ertz points are coming from.
Yeah, I do like Tucker Kraft quite a bit this week, and you do too. I have him at 9, you have him at 10, so he's definitely a startable guy. The Seahawks are, again, it's kind of interesting on both these teams. They are more vulnerable to not the outside receivers, but to the tight end. So when you look at that, Tucker Kraft has a good spot to produce here, has a good chance to score in this game, playing off Josh Jacobs in the running game. So I do like Kraft. And I would go next. Actually, it's pretty close between Zech Ertz and Pat Freiermuth. I think if you're looking for a touchdown out, I think Freiermuth is the guy. If you're looking for like a 5 for 70 performance, you could get that here from Ertz. So that's how I'm going. The Eagles actually are pretty tough on the tight end, and that's why I'm pivoting away from Freiermuth if I can, if I have options. In a lot of leagues, you may not because of the state of this position. And Ertz, again, you play just based on what he's done before. Maybe he'll settle in as that clear number 2 target behind McLaurin in this one. But I do like Kraft more than the others.
I'd go with Kraft first too, and then it's Freiermuth, and then Zech Ertz. I think I know the Eagles are decent, like really good against tight ends, but the Steelers need him, right?
Yeah.
They're going to have to target him. There's no George Pickens. He's going to be used near the end zone, and he's been the tight end 5 and the tight end 4 over the last 2 weeks, where Zech Ertz hasn't finished as a top 5 tight end at all this season. So I just Freiermuth's ceiling is higher, and I think their floors are pretty much the same. So that's why I would just go for more upside there. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Give us a like on whatever podcast app you're listening to. And we'll be back tomorrow to discuss our sleepers at each position and get into some DFS talk. So enjoy your night. Go 49ers. Bye, y'all.